I picture them with darker skin, wearing a headdress or a headscarf, and not necessarily having the same freedoms that men do in their culture.
We interviewed multiple Americans from across the country who were students at the University of Iowa to understand a Western idea of what a Middle Eastern woman is. We asked questions based on our previous knowledge of stereotypes associated with Middle Eastern women. We are arguing that Middle Eastern women are misrepresented in the Western media. Most people in the Western world are not accurately informed about traditions and cultures of the Middle East. This causes stereotypes and prejudice, hurting the reputation of Middle Eastern women.
Media is the quickest way to help people explore other countries without leaving their homeland. The downfall is that the audience will only have visions or knowledge of the unknown country from what is seen in the media. This has impacted the way the media is constructed and how media consumers view Middle Eastern women. Many pictures and other types of media represent the Middle Eastern women as passive, culturally subordinate to men, and powerless. The images of these women usually consist of them standing in groups with other women, fully dressed, with their face being the only skin showing. Many Westerners do not understand the reasons Muslim women wear different types of headdresses. They see an oppressed woman, a victim of her own religion, but the media also represents Middle Eastern women as a threat to the West.
There have been recent terrorist attacks across the world which involved Muslim women, such as the mass murder in San Bernardino, California, which took place in 2015. In most cases, the word terrorist usually only corresponds with the male population, but now that women are involved in terrorism, does it change the way Westerners view them? To some, they may still look oppressed. Media still may depict them as brainwashed by their religion or by Muslim men. Other media may view the hijab as a symbol of terrorism, thus causing viewers to associate Middle Eastern women who wear any type of headdress as a threat. The action of these female terrorists have made it more difficult for the Middle Eastern women to be represented.
The media generalizes different races, cultures, religions, and gender in the Middle East. Audiences don't think about what country each woman is from or what religion she is when a woman is described as Middle Eastern. When thinking of a person from the Middle East, Western audiences are likely to view them all as being one religion, culture, and ethnicity. The most common way the media recognizes a woman as Middle Eastern is a woman wearing a hijab. But do most Westerners know what a hijab is? There are many different ways a Middle Eastern woman can dress according to her own culture or beliefs. By the media not specifying what race, religion, or culture, these women have been categorized into one group.
A Western person might view a woman in a hijab as oppressed or even violent due to the representations shown by the media. For an example, a Muslim woman wearing a hijab was denied a Diet Coke on an airplane because they believed she could use the Coke can as a weapon. When audiences view these messages associated with women wearing headdresses, they can be easily misinterpreted. The media doesn't cover the cultural aspects of these women's lives to explain the tendencies or their culture. Instead, they show representations of them created by Western media. Explanations of cultural behaviors and tradition would help inform audiences and better explain a more accurate understanding of Middle Eastern women.
To better understand women misrepresented by Western media, we will analyze the history and development of gender roles in modern Middle Eastern nations. Aspects of culture that Westerners commonly associate with female oppression include polygamy, apparel, the preservation of honor, or qawwama, and the idea that Middle Eastern women are submissive to men in all aspects of life. Even more typical is the Western idea that all of these cultural aspects are tied and inspired by Islam. The story of Muhammad and his formation of Islam, however, began with a woman who is now famous throughout the Middle East.
Before the advent of Islam, the Arabian Peninsula was populated by a nomadic people who traveled and traded throughout both Africa and into northern territories. After being orphaned and traveling with various caravans, Muhammad became employed for a woman named Khadijah. Khadijah was a wealthy merchant who owned property and controlled caravans that traveled as far as modern-day Syria. She initiated the proposal, and the 25-year-old Muhammad married Khadijah, who was 15 years older than him. Thus, Khadijah became the first wife and companion of the Prophet. Islam spread quickly in the years following Muhammad's death, The belief spread through northern Africa and into the Iberian Peninsula, as well as into the Far East. Along with Christianity and Judaism, the belief in one God, monotheism, became to dominate the Middle East. The Quran, which had been orally passed on, was finally put into text about 30 years after his death. Due to the pace and geographic spread of Islam, the original beliefs and teachings of Muhammad became to blend with local traditions amongst people of 3 continents. The centuries following the conception of Islam resulted in new sects and splintered beliefs unique to the varying populations. The treatment of rights of women in the Middle East are also varying and unique depending on location and religious sect.
Centuries of political, religious, and cultural formation has thus established differing amounts of freedom and expression for these women. In Saudi Arabia, for example, women cannot hold political positions, drive a car, or be in public without a male family member. The Taliban enforced similar conservative laws when in control of Afghanistan. Women in Kuwait do not have the right to vote. These are only a few nations, however, in a region that is growing in gender equality.
Although some of these gender norms in the Middle East might be harmful to women, it is important to understand that generalizations are made about Middle Eastern women in Western media. The traditional Western image of a Middle Eastern woman is one that is oppressed and an exoticized creature controlled by men and religion. This is a clear example of ethnocentrism due to a clear influence of power demonstrated when Western values are used as a universal measure of progress and modernity. Western feminists believe that the way they are progressing is the only right way to do so, while women in the Middle East might be progressing, but in different ways.
It is unfair to generalize an entire group, in this case Middle Eastern women, as lesser due to cultural differences. This generalization has recently been challenged through the Arab Spring. This demonstrates Middle Eastern women as diverse rather than generalizing the entire group as an other, as most Western feminist discourses do. The Arab Spring is a collection of uprisings of women who defied these typical stereotypes of oppression, as they are veiled but far from helpless. For example, Qatar as a nation has drifted away from conservative Islam. Additionally, in Tunisia, abortion is now legal and polygamy is prohibited. Aside from the Arab uprisings, it was easy to find examples of Middle Eastern women representing themselves much differently than what media represents them as. One professor from Arizona State University, Ann Koblitz, wrote an article about her experience in the Persian Gulf state of Abu Dhabi. She writes that women were thriving in male-dominated fields, stating that they were defying Western stereotypes. One woman, Sonia Shakun, comments that she's been living and working in the Middle East for over 10 years, where women are empowered, active, independent, and powerful. She says that Western media misrepresents women from the Middle East, making the article from Ann Koblitz important.
The Arab Spring uprisings have positively influenced the equality of Middle Eastern women. However, the Western media continues to display biased images about them. Middle Eastern women are misrepresented, causing many viewers to be misinformed. When learning about any global topic, people cannot rely on Western media exclusively. These media outlets are often biased and only focus on specific aspects of tradition and cultures different from our own. International issues covered by Western media must be taken with a grain of salt, as the cultural realities are typically misrepresented.